Hello, everyone, and welcome to an all new episode of Deep Cuts Live. I'm your host, Antoine Reid, and today we have a guest who was on the first season, as we call it, of Deep Cuts back when I was doing it on Instagram Live. So now he's decided to brave this whole format thing again and come back on. It's Tony Bellatto. You probably know him from the Barba Cigars, and he just recently announced that he's launching a new company, Bellatto Premium Cigars. So let's bring on our guest.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm
I
doing
believe
well. I was
the
telling
last
people
time,
you're braving this thing again.
yeah, well, the last time we did this, I believe it was in 2019, and I predicted the end of COVID would be by the end of summer, and that was 3 years ago.
Well, it was 2020.
Was it?
It was 2020, so it was like 2 years ago. But I think you did make that prediction, and then we laughed about it like later on. That it's like, look what happened. You jinxed
Yeah,
it. You extended
I
it.
did. I ruined it. I ruined it.
So how have you been?
I've been well. Yourself?
I have been pretty good, pretty busy, but I say busy is a good thing these days. So
It is. It is. It was good to see you at TPE.
yeah, it was good to see you too. I was like walking around and there you were, and I was like, I was like, Tony's here. And you were telling me all about the different things that had happened that transpired between us last seeing each other and you seemed a little bit tired, but
Yeah,
you,
I was.
you survived and now you look refreshed.
I'm actually on vacation currently. That's my last day. I went and visited my parents in Naples, Florida. And I was, like I was telling you earlier, it was snowing in Ohio this week, so it's a really good change of pace to get to the sun for a little bit, get a little recharge because I got a big summer coming. So
Yeah, we're going to talk about some of that stuff coming up with your company. So, just for those people who did not watch the 2020 show, can you give us a little intro to who you are and all the different companies that you kind of work in and run and have launched? Because I know it's a lot.
it is a lot. So originally I started with my father at a retail store. My dad's been a premium cigar retailer for 50 years this year. It's his 50th anniversary. Um, I started at his shop selling premium cigars. Uh, Along the way, I fell in love with wine. It's a very long story, but I fell in love with wine, and then I went to what is now it was called Cleveland Wine School. Now it's the American Wine School. For 4 years and became a WSET certified sommelier. I added a craft beer and wine program and a bar to the store that I had opened in 2005. Um, from there, um, I eventually met. Well, I'd known Tom Lazuka my entire life. Tom Lazuka used to sleep on my dad's couch when he was just first starting out, and my dad and Tom have been friends forever. Um, Tom introduced me to Robert Caldwell when Robert had the Wynwood Cigar Factory, and kind of said, this kid knows a lot about wine. He's been in the cigar business forever, but he's never really blended a cigar. Maybe there's something that you guys can do, together. And then instantly, Robert and I became friends. He doesn't have many. Um, but yeah, instantly, Robert and I became friends. I actually met Matt Booth through Tom Lazuka as well. So Tom kind of put this trifecta of degenerates together. Um, but so Tom introduced me to Robert, and we started blending cigars at his factory in Miami. And then I had the idea to come up with my own line from what we did in Wynwood. That was the original La Barba Red. We moved to Henderson Ventura's factory in 2014. And that's where I developed the La Barba Purple. And from there, I started making cigars at the Ventura factory. Robert distributes them through Down and Back. And then along that way, I started a wine import company. I import a Rosé Cava called Viva La Vida. It's a dry sparkling rosé because at the time there wasn't, and I don't know that there is now. At the time, there was not an affordable sparkling rosé that was real and not sweet. And I thought that the market needed that because I really like to drink bubbles with cigars. So that's how that business kind of started going on. And then just recently in 2017, we started Youngstown Coffee Company. We had been buying our coffee off of a roaster that was local, and he was ready to retire, and we weren't sure what we were going to do with the coffee business, so we decided to start roasting our own, and that's Youngstown Coffee Company, and that's been going on since 2017, and that's kind of the short, long version of everything, if you will.
So what inspired you to start all these different businesses? Because it's a lot. Usually
I
people
found
have
out
one little business and you have like 50 going on at one time.
Right. Well, I found out the hard way that I could do if I started a business for something that I loved, then I could get it real cheap. So I get free cigars basically. I get free wine. I get free coffee. So it's all stuff that I love doing, um, which makes it a lot easier to do. But yeah, every one of those businesses, I saw an opportunity, or a niche or somewhere where we could go and develop something that was really cool. And then when I first started with my dad, and I saw his entrepreneurial spirit, that kind of um, sparked that same thing in me, and I've just been doing it ever since, with all these different companies. So that's kind of where we ended up.
So before we jump into the whole cigar thing, let's talk about the coffee thing a little bit, because I don't know if
Okay.
people really understand or know that you have this coffee thing going on, because I follow it on Facebook, so I see all the little updates, and it's very fun packaging, very fun, different flavors. So just tell us about that business and how you got in, touch again how you got into it, and then like what you experienced with the coffee industry, because it's completely different, I'm sure, from what we know from cigars.
Yeah, I mean it's completely separate as a business, but as an item, I guess, right? As a consumable good, it's very similar, right?
Mhm.
Similar countries, very similar in blending profile and how to blend stuff, and but the opportunity came because in my dad's original shop, there was a unit that was used originally as like a planning, like where they would survey to build. It was the office where they built the plaza, but it was on the back of the plaza, and it wasn't being used for anything. And it was about 2,000 square feet or so. And I went to the plaza owners, and I said, you know, what are you guys doing with this space? Because it's not being used for anything. And she said, well, I'll give it to you for like $200 a month. And I was like, all right, let's do it. So I split it in half and built a private, members only club for my dad's store on one side of it. And on the other side, we put our coffee roasting room. And we started with an old 1970s Ozturk manual uh, coffee roaster. Since then, we've graduated. We can do 155 pounds at a time now, at a drop, as they say, um, at a time. And my brain doesn't retain what it used to now that I'm older. So it was kind of difficult for me to get used to learning how to roast coffee, but I insisted on learning it manually and having all my people learn it manually so that we could graduate up to having like the computers do it and all that stuff. But I wanted to make sure that we knew how to do it, um, the old school way, if you will. And that's why we use that old Ozturk coffee roaster. So using that and learning how to listen for different things and watch for different things while you're roasting coffee is a great experience. And it's also a really good learning curve, so you know exactly what you're doing and how it all works. But that was a really fun experience for me. Um, we get all of our beans from all over the world, anywhere from Indonesia, Ethiopia, Nicaragua, Honduras, Brazil. I'm leaving a bunch out, but Colombia, um, Tanzania, Java, Indonesia, and each one of those beans likes a different roast profile. So to get into coffee, like kind of 101 real quick. So when you get a green coffee bean and you put it into a roaster, the roaster is like a big dryer, right? It has a drum and then has a manifold underneath that heats it. So the beans go in green and they start to roll around, and as they roll around and get heated up, what happens is the starch begins to convert to sugar, much like wine or even tobacco when it ferments.
Mm-hmm.
And when that process happens, that's when your coffee roasting begins. That's called first crack. So there's first crack and then there's second crack. Second crack is when the bean is going to start to burn. That's when it literally, like, the bean will crack because it's been roasted so much. And most of our stuff is brought right almost the second crack because we like a darker roast profile. But anywhere in between that first crack and second crack, which is about a half hour to 45 minutes depending, is your what's called your roast profile. So that's where you get like your light, medium, and dark roast, or you could go into like what's called a city roast. A city roast is similar to French roast or Italian roast. It's pretty much what Starbucks standard is a full city roast.
Okay.
And we just kind of learned trial by fire, with that, and started developing that as a business, and it's really been doing well. I mean, we get great coffee and great response from it.
And that's called Youngstown?
Yeah, Youngstown Coffee Company. That's where I'm from, is Youngstown, Ohio.
And talk about the rosé business, because I started drinking a little bit more rosé because I know that you talk about it so much. And it's not your rosé yet. I haven't tried it yet, but just talk about the whole rosé business and um, how that's different from all your other businesses.
So the wine business is a funny one, and the rosé one is in particularly funny because people don't generally necessarily equate rosé with anything. People think of whites for by the pool or whites pre-dinner. Red is with your steak, and rosé gets kind of like a bad rap. And a lot of people think that it's sweet. And the original, the story that I like to tell all the time is the Sutter Home story and how they invented white Zinfandel. So Zinfandel is a red grape, and it's used. And I could back up a little bit. So for a wine to get its color, it has to sit on the skins and the stems and the seeds. And a white wine doesn't do that. All grape juice is clear. So a red wine, the must sits on the skins and the stems and all that stuff as it's fermenting. And that's how it becomes red wine. Well, they were making regular red Zinfandel, and somebody broke a pipe before the wine was done fermenting, and it started leaking pink wine all over the ground, and somebody decided to taste it. So it's halfway fermented mistake wine that became white Zinfandel that everybody thinks is rosé. That's not actually what rosé is. As you probably know, you've had plenty of nice dry rosés. Rosés are supposed to be bone dry, have a real nice bubblegummy kind of nose with almost tastes like raspberry, a little bit of cherry, but it's like a Pinot Noir light, generally, is what I like to say. So it's been a very uphill battle with trying to get our cava into people's hands, because you kind of have to taste it to believe it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So with rosé, our rosé is 100% Pinot Noir grown in Barcelona, Spain. It sits on the skins for 8 hours, and that's what gives it its pink color. A lot of people cheat with rosé. Also, they'll make a white wine 2/3, and they'll top the final third with red wine, and then hence it becomes pink. But ours is real. It has about 8 grams per liter of sugar, which is dry. for a rosé, sparkling rosé, and it's done in the traditional method, or meaning that it's riddled to get out the yeast and sugar. So it's done exactly everything that goes into the cava that we have is done the exact same way that they make champagne in France and Champagne, France. Hence, that's how I get the cava designation, and that's what the way that I wanted it. But I also wanted it to be super affordable, so it retails for about $14.99. And I do that with my friends at Treasure Hunter Wine Company. He's been a friend of mine for years. He helped me start La Barba. But we do that project together. We're in about 13 states now, and that's another, that's another hard business to be in. You have to feet on the, boots on the ground, and beat the streets for that business as well. So it's been a long couple years, to say the least.
Imagine. So now getting to La Barba. So what year did you launch La Barba, and could you recall what that first year of running your cigar company was like?
So I launched La Barba in 2012, and I launched it basically out of my garage. I got 500 boxes of cigars and a bill, and then just started cold calling people. I just was on the phone. My dad's been in business long enough to have known some people that were gracious enough to give me a chance. And I did everything myself. I ordered the bands, I ordered the boxes, I blended the cigar, I made calls, I shipped, I did credit card processing, I kept an inventory. I did all that myself. And then that first year was really rough because I would get an order for, I'd have to pay the bill for the cigars in, 30 days, but I had like customers that weren't paying me for 60 days. And, I had to take out, I had a life insurance policy that I cashed in to keep it going. So the first 2 years were really tough until I had a sit down meeting with Robert, and I told him my frustrations and how it was going. And he said, why don't we just start I also had to pay Ohio OTP tax on everything that landed into Ohio, which at the time was 17%. And then anything that I shipped out of state, I had to put on a report that I sent out of state to get a credit for my next cycle. So my cash flow was a huge problem because of that as well. So I was always paying the state money only to get credit back if I sent cigars like to you in North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
Then I would eventually get the tax money back, but that took another, how the government works really quickly. That took another 70 or 80 days for me to end up getting that money back. So I had a meeting with Robert, and we just hashed out. He was in Miami distributing his own cigars at the time, and he said, "Would you like to be involved in a distribution company to distribute your cigars from Miami? All the cigars would come to one central location. We could share a sales force. We could share logistics in the office. We can share our office manager." And that's how the down and back portion of Robert's business got started. And then later on, Matt came and we helped him with the same kind of thing. And that's how this whole kind of thing got started.
So what's been your favorite part about being in the cigar industry, and then what's been your least favorite part?
My favorite part of the cigar industry is all of it. I think that the thing that I really love about it is how it brings people together, and my dad kind of taught me that at an early age. Like, you never know who you're at the cigar store with, and it makes everybody equal.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great equalizer. You could be sitting down at a cigar store next to, a guy that works paycheck to paycheck, a billionaire, a firefighter, a policeman. It doesn't matter. None of that matters. All that matters is that you guys are together smoking cigars. And I think that's what I love about it. It's a great equalizer. There's no pretense, involved in enjoying a cigar with somebody. It's also a great social tool. It's a good reason to get together. That's what I love about the cigar business. I met you because of the cigar business, and we've become friends.
Yeah.
Um, and a lot of my friends I've met because of the industry. And there's a lot of great people in this industry, and I think that's what it's about. And it's about the camaraderie ship and all of the things that we have learned and became friends with over the period of time that we've been in it. The thing I hate about the cigar business is flying from Youngstown, Ohio to Nashville, hopping in a car, driving 5 hours to stopping in Chattanooga, then going back to, Nashville, then going down to Charleston. And these are all day trips. I'm in a car for 7, 8, 9 hours a day. Then I have to do a 6-hour event. Then I fall asleep, and then we wake up at 7 in the morning and drive 5 hours to the next city and do the same thing. And I remember specifically in my first couple of years on the road, I woke up in a hotel room, and I was so scared because I thought that I was going to wake up. The hotel I stayed in the night before was in Atlanta, Georgia, and the hotel I was staying at the next night was in Athens, Georgia. But I woke up thinking that I was going to have I was in a different bed facing the wall. And the night before, I was facing a window, and I woke up and I didn't have any idea where I was. And I walked outside and I still didn't have any idea where I was. And it took me about 20 minutes of waking up to realize what city I was in, because I had been in 10 days, I was in 10 different cities, you know, trying to sell cigars and do events and meet people. And it just, that part of it. And I think that year, I spent 225 days of the year traveling. And that was the most grueling thing that I've ever done in my entire life. And at that time I was 28, so I could do it. But now at 38, there's no way. I don't think I could do that again. It saved my life.
It's funny because I think the pandemic kind of showed a lot of people in the cigar industry that the travel aspect is the one aspect of the cigar industry that nobody was like really enthusiastic about. They knew that it was important, but it was like you saw so many people who are constantly on the go, like kind of relax, and was like, this is kind of nice not having to be on the road so many days out of the week, so many days out of the year, and to be able to
Yeah.
drink for a little bit. So it's like the whole industry got a nice reset for a good year and a half or however long it took people to finally get back out.
Yeah. I mean, I think it saved a lot of lives too. I was on the road, and when you're on the road, and I feel bad for sales guys, because, you're on the road and you're stopping for, Whataburger or In-N-Out. It's not like we're at Morton's Steakhouse every night, smoking cigars, having a good time. It's like you're eating a cheeseburger in the car. And I remember the first 2 years, I probably gained 60 pounds by just living on the road. So I think it saved a lot of lives and a lot of stress for a lot of people.
Well, what does it take to actually get traction in this industry? Because I think a lot of people think like, they're going to launch a product and it's going to catch on maybe a couple months or a year or whatever. What's the reality of that?
The reality of that is all about relationships, and you have to have them with your customers, or you're never going to make it. You have to have it with your customers as your retail customers and your end consumers, and that's the most important thing. And you have to go out and you have to do it. You have to be in person, and you have to be present, and you have to answer. My phone. If I get a text message at 2:30 in the morning, there's a problem with something in my cigars, I have to answer it. And you have to have tenacity, and you have to have grit, and you have to get out and do it. And that's the key, I think, to trying to, it took me a very long time to get my business where it is. And it also took me a very long time of being on the road and doing that to get to a position where people trust me and trust my brands and trust that I'm going to deliver a product. And that's the other thing. You have to start with a great product, and starting with a great product is beyond the first thing you have to do. And then the second thing is you have to get in a plane, get in your car, and just go shop to shop and meet the guys and get them to believe in your brand and get them to believe in you, because you are an extension of your brand. And then as far as keeping your brand relevant, you don't always have to have new releases, and you don't always have to have new stuff. But you have to engage with your consumers, and you have to engage with your customers, and make them feel like they're safe in your hands.
Now, recently you announced that you were going to launch sort of a new company or a new project. I don't know what you want to call it, but Bellatto Premium Cigars. Is that it?
Yes.
So
Yeah. So
how did that come about?
So that was, basically a fireside chat with my dad. And it was just, we've been in this business for so long. La Barba, there was a lot of partners, not a lot, but there's partners in La Barba. And, there's a certain direction that La Barba is going in. And I would like to keep that the same, and I'm going to. There's still going to be releases from La Barba in the future, and La Barba's quality control is still maintained by me. But the Bellatto premium cigar thing happened, fireside with my dad, and he said, "Let's do something together." He's retired from the stores now, and he said, "Let's do something together, and we'll kind of use my relationships in the business that I've had for so long, and pick some factories and do some fun stuff, and kind of bring it all back to where it started, which is, a family business and family and friends business." So that's the direction that Bellatto Premium is going to go in. The first cigar that we're going to release is going to be, it's called Knockaround, and it's a price point at $7, $8, and $9 MSRP. It's a cigar for everybody. There's going to be Habano, Connecticut, Maduro in that. There's Bellatto Edition, which all of those cigars are tobaccos that have been very important to me and my dad growing up. We're trying to do my dad has been a huge fan of Cameroon his whole life. So Cameroon is very expensive, but we're trying to find real Cameroon for that. We've also my dad and I have been huge fans of broadleaf, Connecticut broadleaf tobacco. So the Edition is going to be kind of our favorite stuff that we have grown up in the industry with. That's Edition, and there's a couple other things that'll be coming through the pipeline in the future, but that was kind of the antithesis for the Bellatto Premium Cigars. Is going to be primarily my dad and I working on stuff, still distributed by Robert for Down and Back, but a completely new kind of take on everything. So it's going to be fun.
Tell us a little more about your dad, because when I read the press release about the new Bellatto Premium Cigars, I know that you emphasized that, you wanted your dad to be a part of this a little bit more than he was in your other businesses and with La Barba. So just tell us a little bit about who he is, and then kind of like what he kind of taught you about business and life in general.
Well, when I started La Barba Cigars, my dad told me I was crazy. It'll never work. It'll never work. So it took me 10 years to get him to believe in it, but he finally does. No, but my dad always taught me that, like I told you about building the business, that's how my dad's always been. Be honest, work hard, and have a great product, and build relationships. And those are the cornerstones to everything. But yeah, it took him 10 years and seeing that I can actually do this to want to jump in the pool with me. He had his own brand in the late 90s. Well, he was an importer of a brand in the late 90s called Fittipaldi Cigars. It was Emerson Fittipaldi, was a race car driver, and my dad was the importer and marketer and distributor for that brand. So he's used to that end, and that didn't go so well. But I think he had a bad taste in his mouth about that at the beginning. So now that I have kind of a track record, now he's ready to put his, hat in the ring and do some cool stuff. My dad's always had a different palate than me, so I think it's fun to, get different cigars and try them with him and see what his input is. With La Barba, I'd always just give him, the finished product, and he would tell me whether or not he loved it or hated it. But this project is a little bit more. He's a little bit more passionate about it, a little bit more hands on. So combined, it's we have almost 80 years combined of tobacco blood in us. So I think it's really going to prove itself in the products that we come up with.
Well, I know you're probably excited about, because I've seen your dad at trade shows, so I know that
Oh
he's
yeah.
very lively. He likes to be in the middle and the thick of it all. So I'm sure that he's probably just as excited as you are about, getting involved, but at the same time having it be your thing as well, so he can kind of come in and out as he needs to.
Right. Well, that's exactly the point. I'm gonna do most of the work, and he's gonna do most of the handshaking and drinking and smoking and stuff. So, which is great. Which is great. That's what he wants to do now that he's like me. He retired to start a new business, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but when I walked in here today, I'm on vacation at his. He has a house down here, and we're at his country club getting ready to have dinner. And when we walked up, there was 10 guys around him, all smoking cigars, and they were drinking, and all these mugs that come down here, and all of his buddies. So I think he's really enjoying that aspect of joke telling and try the new stuff that I got going on, and they're all really excited because they're all old too, and it's fun to walk in and see that. Cigars aren't always really accepted at a lot of places,
Right.
but my dad always makes enough friends when he goes places to kind of carve out a niche. So we always get put in like the cigar guy corner of all these places. This is which is where I'm at right now. And those guys are still over there, but it's kind of, it's fun to see, all when we go places, what my dad has managed to carve out where we're allowed to sit and smoke cigars and be out of everybody's way. They can complain. But that's who he is. Like I said, like you said, you met him before. He's a cartoon character, and he just brings life everywhere he goes. And I think that's important. I think he has 50 years has earned the right to have his last name on a cigar. It's not for me to have my name on it. It's for him to have his name on a cigar. And I think that he deserves it. And I think that he should be proud of it.
And I'm sure he will be. I mean, like I said, and for those of you who haven't seen the press release, I mean, it's worth reading because it's definitely kind of gives you a lot of insight into like where you're going to take this. So I'm interested to see where you take it and then where Barba kind of goes, because it seems like it'll be two different tracks, completely different products.
Yeah, completely different. So it's fun. It's a fun endeavor. We went into, when you did the article for us a couple years ago, there was, and I believe you can still find that online, right? The article that you
on tobaccobusiness.com.
Because that goes really deep into the relationship with my dad and all that stuff. We had some fun with that article. So that dives a little deeper into all that stuff.
Yeah, definitely. I just think it's interesting because it's like you and Robert and Matt Booth, like all kind of defined this kind of boutique category as it is now. And I think you all put your personalities out there in front of it. You just don't put the product out there. So I think it wouldn't work if it was just, here's a product and nobody knew anything about you all. Like when I think of La Barba, I think of our times that we've had together. And when I see anything that Robert puts out, I think of, the conversations that we've had and, how frank he is and how he doesn't hold back. And when I think of Matt Booth, I think of how playful, he is. So it's just like, I think it's a good example for those of people who want to start a business about not being afraid to put yourself out there a little bit. Because I think when you first start a business, some people are afraid of, mixing up the product with themselves. And I think there's a lot of value to that.
I mean, I agree with you. And I think that, you always have to be yourself. Like I said, if you have the product and you're yourself, then you're going to attract other people that are like that. That's how the three of us are. our personalities couldn't be different between me, Robert, and Matt. We have three completely different personalities, but we're drawn to each other because of cigars, and we have this friendship, and it stands the test of time. But we're all alpha guys, and we all know who we are, and we're all proud of it. And I think if you're like that, then you could go to the moon. And I think that you just need to be confident enough in yourself, and just kind of, don't dip your toe in, just jump in the water, and be yourself, and be proud of it, and be proud of your product, and make a great product.
Yeah, and what's your approach to marketing your product? Because I know you're not the type who feels like they need to like advertise in certain magazines or have web banners and all this stuff, and yet there's a lot of people.
I can't afford it.
Well, if you could afford it, would you do it? Do you think it'll be that helpful?
No, I mean, I might, but I don't think so. I'd rather, I'd rather take you out for a nice steak dinner, and spend money on developing my relationships personally with people. And I think that that's money well spent. And I think that that's where we need to put our energy and our effort is into taking care of our customers. That's kind of the most important thing. And the second part about marketing, everything is very different. We have Lost and Found, we have La Barba, and now Bellatto. They're all completely different visually, and I think that it would be hard. It's hard to put our personality into a box, and therefore it'd be hard to put our personality onto a page, I think. And I think that's the key to it. I just don't think. Does that make sense to you? Like, it'd just be hard for me to express how I am and how our brands are on a sheet of paper.
Yeah, and I think working on the media side of the industry, I see a lot of companies struggle with that because it's like, what's the message? Like
Right.
you said, how do you portray that message in a flat 2D, kind of way, and come up with something catchy to say in just a few words and with a nice little headline and a nice picture. And it's very hard to do.
If you could think of a way to do it, let me know, because I am open to suggestions.
Well, no, I think from my experience, seeing all these podcasts that have emerged over the last couple of years, seeing how video now is kind of going to the forefront. A couple of years ago, everything was about Facebook and Instagram. And now everything's kind of shifting over to video stuff, TikTok and YouTube and stuff like that. I mean, it's a completely different experience. I think people want to actually hear from people like you. They want to learn about the brand. I know when we did that 2020 interview for for Deep Cuts, I know afterwards there was like several people were like, I've heard of La Barba, but now that I heard from Tony himself and talking about it, I want to learn more about this. There was one person who wanted to know more about your wine stuff, and there was a reason that wanted to know about your actual product. And I think that goes a long way. And I just think it's a completely different format of marketing that maybe the industry hasn't really caught up with yet.
I agree 100%. And there's cigars, cigars are born from stories. I mean, think about the greats in the industry, like Guido Gomez and Carlito Fuente and Ernesto Carrillo, like these guys, these legends, but their stories, I've sat with these guys and heard their stories. And to hear their stories completely changes everything about how you look at this industry.
Exactly.
To hear, and I think that's so important. And I think that this, like what we do here, is a great way to tell those stories and to get that out there so people understand what it is we do. It's not really just a bunch of dried up leaves. It's a lot more than that.
Exactly. I mean, I was on Facebook the other day, and there was somebody from the industry who was, making a comment. They said, the industry is just about the product. It shouldn't be about the stories. And I kind of disagreed with that because to me, when people start hearing stories and they start seeing the faces behind the brands, then it completely transforms their relationship. They feel like, I want to support Tony because I know that he's a good guy. He's not just, making this money and then running off and buying a yacht with it.
Right.
Yeah. So they want to know these brands, but there's just not a lot of places to go to learn beyond like a store event. But even with a store event, I mean, it's hard because it's not going to reach a lot of people once you leave that store, unless it was videoed or something like that. That experience kind of stays there with those people, and
Right.
you have to rely on them to share it. And maybe always share it.
Well, I think they do, and I think it touches consumers to do an in-store event when you have a round table of guys smoking cigars and you explain your story and the cigars. Then they know, it sticks with them, and then they tell their friends, and then they make their own stories, and then I've done events and gone places where you know I'll tell a story or something, and then I'll come back 2 years later, and somebody else will come up to me and be like, "Oh, I smoked a La Barba cigar with Joe Schmo 6 months ago, and he told me the story about how you did this or you did that, and that's why I really fell in love with your cigars." And I think that sort of old school, it's like old school viral marketing. You know what I mean? Like one person at a time.
Yeah, but I think because people now don't have the patience to wait for that to grow,
Right.
it is not seen as well. It's valuable, but people don't see it as valuable because they want like instant results. They want to build a website and they want people to come to it instantly and buy stuff from it, and they want to release a product and have it sell out, within a week, so they can let's move on to the next project or whatever. And it's the theme of this year's Deep Cuts discussions have mostly been about patience and how people have to, you know, they have to work on their patience in order to get success.
Yeah, I mean it's taken us, like I said, it's my 10th year, it's my 10th anniversary, and um, patience is definitely a virtue, I must say. I mean, and I think you've known me for what, 5 years now, probably somewhere around there, and
Hmm.
you know how what it takes. I mean, you've seen it. I mean, it
Yeah.
just takes it takes patience, and it takes Ricochet Connecticut's coming out. It was supposed to come out 3 years ago. You know what I mean? I mean, now
Uh-huh.
it's been 3 years I've been trying to release this cigar. So if that gives you any tantamount to what kind of patience you need to have in this industry, it's. But when the cigar's coming, it's going to be perfect, and that's another thing that I strive for.
Yeah, it's like I was working on a story today, and uh, cigar, the person I was writing the story about was talking about how he wanted to make an ultra boutique cigar, and he wanted, and he started his company back in '95, and he focused on very short, limited runs, but that would allow him to always put out good quality without having to compromise. And this is a completely different business mentality because you think a lot of people want to go big with their business, as big as they possibly can. But it just made, like, once you hear his story, it makes a lot of sense because tobacco is not, you know, you're going through different crops, so it's going to change, and it's just not unlimited. It's not a mass market product like a cigarette. Cigarette, you do want it to stay the same because you want people to come back.
Right.
But a tobacco product like a cigar is completely different.
Yeah. When I was on Coop's show last week, and he asked, or a couple weeks ago, and he asked me, he said why, or was I don't know. I've done like a lot of these the past couple weeks, but they asked me, why did it take so long to only have like La Barba Red, La Barba Purple, and the two Ricochets? And it's because I don't want to compromise, and I want to build a solid core line, and I want to make sure that those cigars are what you expect out of La Barba.
Hmm.
That's you know the cigar needs to not only be perfect for me, it needs to be perfect every time, and that's why it took me so long, because it's like I need to. Purple evolved 7 or 8 times over the course to get to where it is now. Different. We started with different wrapper fermentation techniques. Sometimes with the wrapper that we used, part of the cigar would go out, or sometimes it wouldn't burn correctly, and just making sure that cigar is exactly the way it was took 6 years. 5 or 6 years. And the same thing with the current lineup we have. I mean, that the attention to detail that we have to have is incredible because you don't want to put out a bad product. I don't want to do it.
And it's not worth it in the end. It's not worth it to have like 50 products going anyway, because all 50 of them are not going to sell at the same rate. So you'll have a whole bunch of stuff on your end to kind of deal with.
Right. And how do I make sure all 50 of those cigars are right or perfect, you know?
One thing we didn't talk about last time you were on Deep Cuts was Lost and Found. And I know that there's a lot of stuff with Lost and Found that always comes out, but people don't always they don't know the story behind how Lost and Found came about, and then like what the focus. I know the focus is, on these different initiatives, charitable initiatives, but you should just talk about Lost and Found, like what is it, how did it come about, what's the goal with that whole line of product.
So Lost and Found started basically out of a pure love for cigars. And when Robert and I became friends, Robert was, as he does, was traveling all throughout South America, Pan America, Dominican Republic, Honduras, Nicaragua. And he would always, and Robert, but for the people that don't, when Robert sees something he wants, he just goes and gets it. So he would walk in a factory and go, what is that cigar over there? And they would go, oh, that was, something. He'd be like, and he would just grab it. Now I'm going to smoke this. Or we'd go over here and grab, I want to smoke this. And he started smoking these cigars, and he would call me from down there, and he would be like, this cigar's unreal. And I'd be like, well, what is it? He'd be like, well, it's from like 2002, and the guy went out of business, or they discontinued the line, but they kept aging the cigars. Or, when they commissioned a limited edition, it could be anywhere between, if they like a limited edition of 2,000 cigars, they have to make sure they have 2,000. So they'll make maybe 3,500 or 4,000 in case some don't make the cut.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if the initial 2,000 make the cut, the other 2,000 go into an aging room somewhere and get lost, like at the end of Indiana Jones. That's what these places are like. I mean, you walk through these factories, and these guys have cigars from the 90s, the 80s. There's cigars everywhere. So he started sending me these cigars, Rob did, and I would smoke them, and I was like, we need to get these cigars to the people. So that's where we came up with the concept of it. At the time, it was called Impromptu, but somebody else had the trademark. So then it was Bellatto called Will Sears, and eventually Lost and Found when we actually figured out the name. But it was literally just these great cigars that we wanted to get to people. And then from there, it evolved into kind of a weird phenomenon that we didn't think was going to happen, where I saw on our original, the pepper cream soda, somebody was selling it on the secondary market for $150. And we were amazed that this was happening. And then the progression of that brand was interesting, because Rob and I had always talked about giving back, and it was very important to us. My mother has her master's degree in special education. Rob has always been a very charitable, give back kind of person. So we were sitting one night and we were like, why don't we come out with a couple of releases that kind of give back to different communities? And that's where the Give a Fuck kind of initiative started. The original ones that we did were, the first one was initially, when it was going to happen later on, we were kind of planning it and we had to rush it, was initially during COVID, when Rob called me and said the line outside of the Salvation Army is like 1,000 people deep at Camilla's house in Miami. So we went there and talked to them and said, if we do a cigar, will you guys be okay with it? And would you be okay with getting 100% of the proceeds from that cigar? And they said, absolutely. And that was our first charitable initiative. Since then we gave, and also during COVID, so in inner cities, with people that are less fortunate, when they sent the kids home to do virtual schooling, they had to have their own art supplies. Because usually when you go to school, you can share art supplies, right? You can have a colored pencils and paints and stuff like that for art class. But when they sent these kids home to do these things virtually, they didn't have those items or a means to pay for them. So we did another cigar that I can't remember the specific ones because there's been a lot of them, but we did a cigar for that gave school supplies to children in the south side of Chicago. And then we did Toys for Tot, or then we did the El Pavo, which each one of those packs sold, fed a family of 4 Thanksgiving dinner. They couldn't afford it. Then we paired with Toys for Tots and did the Chance cigar. And then we did a 9/11 Tunnels to Towers Foundation cigar, where we gave back to the Tunnels to Towers Foundation impact victims of first responders for 9/11. And we're working with a company that does now that cleans up ocean plastic, which is pretty cool. It's a very big problem. But that's kind of what we like to do, is give back for that. And now, since the inception of Lost and Found, so Lost and Found is 9 years old this year. We started manufacturing cigars back then as well, and aging them. So the stuff that we're coming out with now, like Instant Classic, 22 Minutes to Midnight, 15 Minutes of Fame, those are all cigars that we produced back then and started aging. So there's kind of a Lost and Found manufacturing division now, where we're making these cigars and putting them away for a very long time. And then we have Antique Line that came out. And Antique Line is very, very old, very, very well-aged products that we have found that are in very limited quantities, but we found to be unbelievably good. And that's Antique Line. That's authorized retailers only. I think we have 25 accounts is our max on that. Because some of the cigars we'll find a box. So there'll be one of one, and they're all numbered, 1 of 20. Sometimes we'll only find 200 cigars or something. So and those go back. Some of them are from 2002, 2001, 2000. So it's the direction. We're not boxing and banding everything. That's the direction that Lost and Found is headed. We're no longer going to paper bundle and unban things, because a lot of other people are doing that now.
Mm-hmm.
So we're trying to get away from the copiers, if you will. So that's Lost and Found in a nutshell.
Well, I think it's a great initiative. Like I said, it's you all giving back and kind of challenging what people think of cigars, because non-cigar smokers just think cigars are bad, but you're showing that you can actually do some good in the community with the cigars and give back to the communities that you're in through these products. So,
and I always thought it was cool to think that you could, our consumers that buy, the cigars can smoke the cigar and realize that they're giving back too, and that's another important component. It's Lost and Found is always supposed, and it always has been a feel-good company.
mm-hmm.
I mean, all of our companies are supposed to be feel-good companies. La Barba, Caldwell, it's supposed to be about having fun with your friends and having a good time. But Lost and Found, the whole initiative behind that was we're just having fun with our friends and messing around with great cigars. And I think that adding that component to it even makes it more feel-good, where you can feel like, hey, I really contributed to something that made a difference to somebody.
Yeah, definitely. As we come towards the close of our hour together, we usually ask our guests kind of 2 profound Oprah-like questions for them to answer and tackle. So the first of those questions is, have you discovered your why, or what motivates you and drives you to do what you do?
My why?
Uh-huh.
My why, yes, I have. And it is to continue to not get attacked by that bird. One. No, my why is to continue to do things that keep my family and friends together and keep us in the same room together, Any business that I do, that's the goal of it, is to keep everybody together, friends and family always first for us. And Rob and I used to laugh. We just like to do hood rat shit with our friends, and that's the way I want it to stay. I never want it to be. We're not a real company, as I like to say. We don't have corporate meetings. We don't have CEOs or sales managers or any of that. We're just real people that like real stuff, and I think that's the why. And I've discovered that, and that's what keeps me going is continuing to rediscover that through what we do.
The second question is, somebody comes to you and they say, Tony, I know that you are a serial entrepreneur. You have all these different businesses going. What's your advice to someone who wants to start a business for themselves?
My advice to someone that wants to start a business for themselves is, number one, just go for it. Stop making excuses as why would I do this, and start adding why not. Like, why not what I do? There's so many things, and so many people have so many great ideas, and they're just afraid to jump into the pond and do it. And you really, it's like $300 to form your own LLC now. Form your LLC, do it, and keep doing it, and work your ass off, and it'll work, And my advice for people that are starting out is also to never be the smartest guy in the room, and to always listen. For me, when I go to things with other manufacturers that are very successful, or I'm in the same room with guys like Carlito or Lito Gomez or Ernesto, I keep my mouth shut and I listen, because those guys know, and I just, even with Robert, I like to just sit with him and bullshit him and listen to what he has to say, and take his advice and listen to his advice, and then put it into practice. And I think those are the keys, and never be the smart. I don't know if I said this, but never be the smartest guy in the room.
Mm-hmm.
Always be in a room with people that are more talented and more successful than you are. And if you'll soak it up like a sponge, and you'll start to learn from that, and then you'll have your own business.
I think a lot of people have a lot to learn from you, because, like I said, you just get out there and do what you need to do. So I think that takes a lot of bravery, because a lot of people aren't like that.
And to add to it, for every one success, I've had 99 failures, and that's fine. Don't be afraid to fail. Just pick the pieces up and start over again, and just keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it. And then the things that work, and the things that work for you, let them keep working. Is what I think.
Well, definitely. Well, before we sign off, I'd like to give you a chance to tell people the different social media things they need to follow in order to keep up with you and your thousands of different businesses and websites and stuff. I know we have 2 of those on the screen, but for those of people who are not watching, can you just tell people what websites and what social media stuff they need to follow to kind of keep up with you and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. Social media, if you just follow me on Bellatto on Instagram, or look me up, Tony Bellatto, on Facebook. I share everything to my channels as well. But youngstowncoffee.com is where you can get the coffee. Three Finger Wine Company is where you can order the cava. And then La Barba Cigars website needs a lot of work. I don't even think Ricochet is on the website. So that's like on my list of things to do. But just ask your brick and mortar retailer for La Barba Cigars, and I'll be able to point you in the right direction.
Well, awesome. Well, I want to thank you for taking time out of your vacation to come on today and to speak to me and catch up.
I was super excited when you emailed me and ready to do it, because you and I haven't chatted in a while, and I figured it'd be a good time to catch up. And you got me on all relaxed and happy on vacation, and not in my snow-covered house in Ohio with 0 hours of sleep and and not being all tired. So
Yeah, well, you look well rested, and I hope you are well rested for Vegas in a couple months when
it's
trade
creeping up, isn't it?
trade show kicks off. I hope to see you there for sure.
Absolutely. I will let you know where I am at. If it, like I said, I haven't got my booth assignment yet, so I will let you know. I'll let you know when I do that. It'll probably be the day before the trade show when we do. You know how we roll.
Oh
So
yeah.
yeah.
Well, I'm definitely looking forward to seeing you in person and off the screen again. So I'll look forward to that. So thank you again for coming on, and thank you everyone who watched or who listened to this. If you're watching on Facebook or YouTube or Twitter or listening to this on any of the podcasting platforms, just make sure you hit the subscribe button or the like button to be notified of anytime we come out with new content. We have shows most every at least one a week, but lately we've had 2 a week. So we have another 2 interviews coming up next week, and we're already starting to book up for May. So we have some very exciting uh, interviews coming up scheduled that just came through today. So I'm excited to announce those later on next week. But yeah, but thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And until next time, bye.
Thanks, guys.